The Seattle winter didn't just arrive. It occupied the city. It was a relentless, oppressive presence that turned the sky into a bruised sheet of slate and the streets into shimmering ribbons of oil and freezing rain. That morning, long before the sun had any hope of piercing the Pacific Northwest clouds, the chill had seeped into the very marrow of my bones. I was 18, caught in that fragile, terrifying limbo between childhood and whatever came next, and I was exhausted by the weight of a secret I thought I had buried deep in the shadows of my closet. I was startled awake very early that morning when Gina walked into my room. There was no gentle knock, no soft morning greeting. She simply told me to get dressed and meet her downstairs. Her voice was like the winter outside, cold, crisp, and brook no argument. I did as I was instructed, my mind a fog of fatigue and a growing, gnawing sense of dread. When I reached the foyer, the first thing I noticed was the absence of the heavy suitcases that sat near the front door when I came home from school the day before. I thought that she had packed my bags and was preparing to exile me. My heart did a slow, painful roll in my chest. Gina didn't look at me as she gestured toward the car. We drove through the slick, empty streets. A rare sight to see them deprived of traffic, but it was of course just after midnight. Inside the car, the heater hummed, but it couldn't touch the ice forming in my chest. Gina sat behind the wheel, her profile sharp and unforgiving in the dashboard's glow. She had a look of determination that a plan was in motion, that nothing and no one was going to distract her from. "Where are we going?" I whispered, my voice cracking. Gina didn't answer. She was cold, like the night air outside the car. We drove for only a few minutes and pulled into a half-empty parking lot a few miles away. The motel looked like it was held together by grime and bad memories, a dingy, sleazy place that felt a world away from the home I grew up in, and the manicured life Gina usually curated. I watched in silent confusion while she walked into the office and hugged the night clerk as if they were old friends. Between the raindrops collecting on the windshield, I could see the two enjoying a brief conversation, looking back in my direction as if she was filling the manager in on her plans. After a few minutes of hushed small talk, she returned to the car and drove around to a room at the very end of the building, tucked away in the shadows. "Grab the bags from the trunk," she commanded. I sat there for just a moment while she unlocked the door. I stepped out and was hypervigilant, looking around as I moved to the back of the car. I stood in the biting wind, my breath blooming in white plumes. I was terrified, looking around to what I thought would be my new home. As I popped the trunk and gripped the handles of the two bags, I saw a couple of men leaving nearby rooms, followed by two ladies of the evening in outfits far too thin for a Seattle December. This hooker love nest was the last place I expected Gina to be. "Gina, why are we here?" I asked as I stepped into the room, which smelled of stale smoke and industrial cleaner. "I used to work with the owner," she said dismissively, her eyes already scanning the room with a clinical intensity. "Come on, I'm in a hurry and there's no time to waste. Get in the bathroom and take a shower." I walked in as she took the bags from me and stepped into the bathroom that was a nightmare of stained tile and peeling linoleum. I began to unconsciously undress, wondering to myself if this was some sick stepson-stepmother sex thing. But Gina would put that to rest quickly. Gina stepped in and placed a package of disposable razors on the counter. "Shave." I thought to myself, this wasn't happening. If it wasn't some porn-inspired fantasy, maybe this was some bizarre gift. A night with a professional to make a man of me. But I couldn't be more wrong. I showered quickly, clearing the stubble from my face with a single razor. But when I stepped out, my clothes were gone. I wrapped a thin, scratchy towel around my waist and stepped back into the main room. Gina's gaze from the chair in the corner near the window was a cold scalpel. She didn't look at my face. She looked at my chest, my arms, and my legs. Before I could protest, she got up from the chair, walked over, and gently but firmly pushed me back into the bathroom, giving me detailed instructions that made the air leave my lungs in a sharp hiss. I was to shave everything: my chest, my arms, my legs, my underarms. I complied because I was terrified of the power she seemed to suddenly hold over me. I spent the next hour in that humid, cramped space, meticulously removing every trace of my masculinity. I shaved the light hair on my chest and spent forever ensuring my legs were as smooth as glass. I didn't want to feel the weight of her judgmental stare again, so I cleared my pits and arms until I felt strangely aerodynamic and utterly exposed. When I finally reemerged, Gina was standing with her back to me, a large suitcase flipped open in front of her. I was waiting for the fantasy, whatever it was, to begin, but when I saw the silk and lace inside the suitcase, shimmering under the flickering fluorescent light, I realized what was about to happen. This was no gift. It was a reckoning. "I figured out what you've been up to, Brian," she said, her voice flat and final. "I found where you were hiding the clothes you stole from me." The blackmail hit me like a physical blow. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Gina, please." "I'm going to give you a choice," she interrupted, her eyes locking onto mine with a predatory stillness. "You can do exactly as I say for the next few hours, or you can walk out that door right now. But if you walk out, I'm telling your father, your friends, everyone, exactly what I found in your room." The threat was a cage I couldn't escape from, reinforced by the prison cell of the motel room. My secret, the one thing that made me feel like I could breathe in this suffocating world, was now the weapon she was using to dismantle me. "Why?" I choked out. "Why are you doing this?" "Well, I thought about just telling your dad," she said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "But your father was pretty angry at me when Brittany left. Since you decided to steal my clothes, I had every reason to kick you out, but that wouldn't be any fun. So I thought I'd get you some of your own." She took a step closer, her expression shifting into something almost maternal, yet deeply unsettling. "I thought I would help you. I'm going to give you a chance to see what it feels like to be a true woman." I was devastated, floored by the sheer ruthlessness of her plan. My knees weakened and I sat on the edge of the bed, the reality of my situation crashing down around me. "Are you ready?" she asked. My choices limited to none, I sat there trembling. Not from the coldness of the room, but out of anticipation of what was to happen over the course of the next few hours. I didn't answer with words. I took a deep breath, stood up, and let the towel drop. I stood before her naked and shaking, the winter chill of the room now biting at my newly sensitized hairless skin. My transformation began with the efficiency of a military operation. She handed me a pair of black panties and a matching bra. Each garment felt like a brand, a mark of my submission that brought a rising tide of humiliation. As I clasped the bra behind me, she looked at me, impressed at my ability to blindly secure the lace underwire bra behind my back. Next came a package of brown tights. "I assume you know how to put these on without ripping them," she asked dryly. I took the package, my fingers trembling, and sat on the edge of the bed. I slid the sheer nylon over my smooth, freshly shaved legs. The sensation was electric, a terrifying mix of the familiar and the forbidden. As I pulled them up, Gina reached into the suitcase and produced a pair of black ankle boots. They fit perfectly. She had planned every detail of this eclipse. When I stood, she reached out and began tugging and twisting the tights to ensure they were straight. Her touch was far from sensual. She was impatient, her eyes constantly darting to the clock on the nightstand. "Okay, here, slide this on," she said, handing me a tan miniskirt. I stepped into it, the fabric rustling against the tights as I positioned it, zipping it around my waist. Gina gave it a sharp tug to seat it on my hips, then handed me a heavy brown sweater. It was 2 sizes too big, a deliberate choice to hide my boyish frame and create the illusion of a softer, feminine silhouette. "Sit," she commanded while she closed the suitcase and moved it by the door. She pulled the chair directly in front of me and placed a smaller vanity case on my lap. The next hour was a blur of textures and scents that I had only ever experienced in secret, hurried moments. Gina tested foundations against my shaved skin until she found the perfect match. She worked with a makeup sponge, her movements practiced and clinical, moving from concealer to blush, then eyeshadow, and finally a deep velvet lipstick. I put up no resistance. I was shaking, yes, but beneath the fear, a strange, dark intrigue was blooming. I found myself watching her hands, trying to memorize every step, every stroke of the brush. I realized with a jolt of terror and longing that I wanted to remember this. I wanted to know how to recreate this vision on my own, an emotionally petrifying vision I had not seen yet. Finally, she tackled my shoulder-length shaggy hair. She applied a thick layer of hair gel, flattening and styling it until the boyish mess was replaced by a sleek, feminine coiffure. She pulled back, her work complete, and walked around to face me. She closed the vanity case with a definitive click and stood before me, inspecting and admiring her work. Her eyes, more than her words, told me that the young man named Brian had been systematically erased. In his place sat a young woman, dressed for a casual night in Seattle, her identity forged in the crucible of Gina's blackmail. But as the fear began to recede, a more dangerous thought took hold. She hadn't forced me into something I hated. She had forced me to become the person I had always been too afraid to be. She had given me the permission I could never give myself. "Go ahead," Gina said, pointing toward the grimy bathroom mirror. "Go have a look." I stood up, the heels of the boots clicking on the linoleum, and walked toward the bathroom. It was only a few steps, but it seemed miles away. I was torn. I didn't want to obey her. I didn't want her to win, but I wanted to see the possibility.